Have you ever wondered where in the world did this word Israel come from? I mean, obviously we know it's a country, and we know that Israel is, most of us know that Jacob had his name changed by God to Israel. But what does this word Israel mean? And what can it tell us about our own salvation and the path and journey that God has us on? And to begin, I want to actually rewind it a little bit in history. I want to take us back to Abraham and his wife Sarah. God gives a vision, a message. Hey, I want you to go to this land that you don't even know anything about. You just know it's that way. I'm going to lead you, and you're going to go to this area, the promised land. This is a country that I want you to birth. So, all right, we could do that. And, Abraham's wife is Sarah, which means ruler. So, he's got a wife that's a ruler, and his name means father of multitudes. This is the calling God has put on their life. And so they're like, game on. And anybody who's familiar with their story knows that they end up only having one biological child together. And that child's name was Isaac. And so, all right, we got one here. Talk about some nervousness. Talk about the fact that God has put a calling on your life, and you may not see any fruit whatsoever of it, except this little tiny bit of fruit. And you're just like, he's not in this at all. If he was, I would be really blessed that I hear him right. And the reality is, Abraham heard God right. It just wasn't going to be immediately from his one offspring. And his one offspring has the same exact problem. But this time, instead of just having one child, Isaac has twins. Now, this is very significant because in the biblical culture, that your name is part of your calling. And he had two children. One was Esau, and the other was Jacob. And they were coming out. Esau came out first, so he got to get the birthright, supposedly was going to get the birthright. And Jacob came out, and he was holding on to Esau's heel as they're pulling the babies out. So technically, if they came out at the same time if he's holding on to the heel, but that's not how it worked in the beginning, at least. And so Esau's name means worker, a doer. And Jacob means one who follows and replaces. Now, why is that important? Well, first began in birthing this new nation. After they crossed the Red Sea, God gave the written word, a covenant of, hey, these are the laws that I want you to follow. These are the laws I want you to work. So these are the laws I want you to do. So first, that's that word Esau means doer, worker. But holding on the heel is this twin. That means I'm following, meaning I'm coming later, but I'm going to replace doing and working. And what does he replace it with? Very, very important. Now, if you know the story, Jacob wasn't the best character in the Bible for morals and values, and he wanted his dad's blessing so much that he deceived his dad and received the blessing. Now, that's not the part I want to focus on because that's not the good part of the story, but what I do want to focus on is this, is that there's Esau, which represents the law. It means works and doing. And then there's Jacob, which means it follows and replaces that law. And that law gets replaced with what we call Israel. And that's why I want to talk to you about the importance of the name Israel. So Jacob, God blessed him. He ran away from his home because after he deceived his father, his brother found out and wanted to kill him. And so he runs away, and God blesses him. And now he's ready to come back. God says, it's time for you to go back to the land that I promised you to have. And time to go back to that promised land. And one of the things that he encounters along the way is he sends his family away safely, and he's waiting by himself, which is crazy because he could get attacked anytime. And he's worried about his brother Esau attacking him because his brother, last time they talked, it'd been a long time, but his brother wanted to kill him for stealing his birthright. And it was a birthright blessing. And so some spiritual being, it says a man, some think it's an angel, some think it's God itself. Even Jacob believes it was God himself, wrestles with Jacob all throughout the night. And as it starts getting close to daybreak, this spiritual being says, "What's your name?" Now, the spiritual being knew Jacob's name. So it wasn't for the spiritual being to know. It was for Jacob to know and to remind himself. He says, "My name's Jacob. I'm the follower." He didn't go and expound on this, but the name Jacob means your calling is to follow after your brother. But it also means that you'll eventually replace your brother. So, but it also means by cunning. Now, who knows if that came later in the etymology or whatever the words go, but who knows? But it just means to follow and replace. So that spiritual being whacks Jacob's leg or hip, and he still doesn't let go. He is just like relentless. He's like, "I'm not going to let you go until you bless me." And it goes on, and the spiritual being realizes that Jacob is going to endure to the end. He is not going to let go. And that's when he asks him, "What's your name?" And then Jacob requests that he blesses him, be blessed by the spiritual being, and that, and then he asks that spiritual being, "What's your name?" And that being wouldn't answer, which is interesting. He said, "Why do you ask? Why do you want to know?" Meaning, focus on your calling. Focus on the blessing I'm giving you. So the spiritual being changed Jacob's name. He changed Jacob's calling to Israel. And what he did is he took part of his great-grandmother's name, Sarah, which means ruler, and combined it with the word El, which means mighty one, the mighty God of strength. And that angel says, because you have endured and because you've been persistent and that you have endured all this, I will bless you. And he blesses him. What happened? Jacob recognizes that the spiritual being was God, and he calls that place the face of God, because he knew that he had an encounter with the living God. And that being said, "Look, you have wrestled with Elohim," which means the mighty, strong Lord, the God, the spiritual being. And notice I said the word wrestle. That really bothers me because that's what a lot of translations say, but he didn't wrestle with God. He persevered with God. He held on to God. He would not let God go. And as a result, it came across as wrestling, but it's about holding on to God and saying, "Lord, I'm not going to let go until you bless me." And what God did is he changed Jacob's calling from follower to being led by God with mighty strength to rule and to overcome any obstacle. That's what the name Israel means. It means to be led by God's mighty strength to rule and to overcome any obstacle. That's what the name Israel means. And myself as a Christian, what it tells me is that there were two things born at the same time. There was the law, it's doing the works. And then there was the one to follow, which was Jesus Christ, that would replace the law, the works, with not the rules leading you, but with God's mighty power and strength leading you to rule and overcome any obstacle. Jesus Christ was the ultimate Israelite. Lord bless you. Be a light. Shine into the darkness. Overcome it. Be a strong man and woman of God, because his calling and blessing is upon you. Amen.